Those of you that have animated Lugnut know that his head is not posable. It doesn't pivot there at all. For me, head pivoting is a pivotal, for excuse the pun, element in transformer posability. So I'm going to see if I can make it pose. So the first thing I'm going to do is unscrew his whole torso, which there's screws right there, and up here, and down here. And this comes apart, and then you've got this whole head spinning mechanism that turns around, right? It comes right off of there. You can see the gears in there for it. And then this has two screws, one here and one there. And when you take those out, it comes apart just like so. Now this has a cool pivoting thing for the gun to spin, but the head, no. The head is nice and difficultly screwed in the front and the back. But it is nice and hollow in there, so I'm going to see what I can do with some plumber's epoxy putty and a nail, so I can get that to pivot. Plumber's epoxy putty stuff is just some like clay, but it has two different parts to it. You mix together and it gets real hard. So I'm going to see if I can put that in there and attach it to the inside of that somehow, so it'll pivot. Wish me luck. Worst case scenario, it's just going to be static again. Alright, here's my finished Lugnut head. He had not only the post in the front and the post in the back, but there was a little lip around the entire edge, with the exception of a little gap. You can see where I had to cut. I just used my Dremel, filed it off, see there's a gap right there, but everywhere else it had a little lip that fit inside of that. So, shaved all that off so that it can swivel. I took a nail and I cut off the end, I had to make it shorter, and drilled a hole into his head so I could shove it up in there and glued that into place. And also had to, on this is where this goes in, this direction, had to make a groove right there for the nail to go into, the head of the nail that is, and see it fits actually pretty perfectly. I was thinking I was going to have to put some plumber's epoxy putty in there and make it all stiff and whatnot, but nope, that piece fits right there, and now his head actually turns. The only downside is that you do see the gap that is existing underneath, a little bit in the front and some in the back. That doesn't bug me too much. Some of you it may bug. You can, fill it in with whatever and paint it if you want. I'm not going to go that extra mile personally. But make sure that you get it so that the head is still lined up. You want it to be a little bit down, I guess you want to call it. A little bit of a notch right here from where this part is. If it's too close to that, then when the head pivots in the cockpit area, it'll scrape. So you got to make sure to test that out when you're putting it all back together. I'm going to show you how to put it back together right now, just in case you need help with those steps. So first, before we screw this back together, we do need to put his gun turret back in here as well. So put that there, and we've already got the nail. I'll show you again how that nail goes in, what piece that is. See that? So I'm going to put those there. Put the screws in. There you go. Now you can see his gun turret still pivots. Head still pivots. If you make it too loose, you can always put a little bit of glue in the groove where the nail head goes. That's exactly what I did. But it's very nice and stiff there now, and his head turning. Now, you gotta make sure when you're putting everything back together that this wheel is back in place in case it comes out. See how that turns this wheel up here? And so this part right here is what the tail fin moves in order to rotate the head itself. Actually, I'm going to take this part off and put this over here too. See, this part aligns with that wheel. See how it lines up right there? See the little notch? The foot lug nut. See that? So it lines up just like that. Okay? and I put it in the up position, like so. And his head, make sure that this wheel is still in place. There's two little wheels. There's this cog wheel, and then there's another one that's like, I don't know, give it some support or something. That's going to mesh up with this over here. The teeth have to mesh with the gear. The tail then is straight back, so that means his head has to be in the down position, like that. See, and you can test it. Alright, that's where we want it. Now we take the top part, and we're going to put that, line it all up, same as how we took it off. And before I put the screws in, we have to remember to put his front landing gear back in place. Okay. It's just going to go right up in there. Like that. Okay? And it's going to go up and down. It looks to be symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which direction that part goes. And there are 3 screws that came out. There's one long one, 2 short ones. The 2 short ones go up in the front. Oops, like this. That one goes there, and this one goes up here on top. The long one is back here in the back. And if you do want some help holding it together while you screw him back together, you can peg his legs, his hips in the front there. That'll help you a bit. Then once he's all back together, you've got his head down in cockpit mode. Pull the tail down, up comes his head, chest pops out, and you can pivot his head. You can turn, actually look at his hand waving his shaman stick around. When you transform him back to plane mode, make sure his head's lined straight forward, and his head goes straight in when you pull the tail back up, if you do it just right. So there you go. Finally a way to make Lugnuts head pivot. Yay!